Every trade, profession, or group has a vocabulary that's peculiar to them, and this is the case with modern board games. As you go out and look at some of the modern board games, you're going to run across certain categories and terms that you may be unfamiliar with. So I want to go through the categories of modern board games so that you'll be able to sort of identify what category of game you're looking for. First type of modern board game are probably ones you're familiar with, the party games. These are lighter games. Now, what do I mean by the weight of a game? Well, you have light, medium, and heavy. And a light game is going to have a small rule set, and it's more for a relaxed environment or a party atmosphere. Party games are more likely to lend themselves to shorter playing sessions, and they scale well to the number of players. So they play just as well with 20 players as they do with 4 or 5 players. One thing I must mention with these categories is these categories are very subjective. When you look at the categories of games on websites and other places, you're going to find different categories, but these are just my categories, the way I like to think of modern board games. The second category of modern board games for me are Euro games. Why are they called Euro games? Well, a little bit of history. After World War II, military-related toys and other things were highly discouraged, and gaming in Europe shifted to other areas of gaming, such as political-themed games and other mechanics rather than war-related type. So an awareness grew, and awards were given out every year saying, hey, here is a cool new game for this year. It has some very interesting mechanics to it. And they would encourage these new ideas and new ways of playing games. Back in America, America continued with the military games and got quite good at it. And they also continued with mainstream games that were highly successful. Games like Monopoly, so they just would produce another variation on Monopoly. But in the last 10 or 20 years or so, these games that were developed in Europe post-World War II have become quite popular, and they're sort of the modern games I'm talking about, and so they're called Euro games because of where they originated. Even though it may not be made or originate in Europe now, they would still be called Euro games because they have that same style. Characteristics of Euro games are that they require a little bit more thought than party games. You're going to have to develop some kind of strategy. So this category of modern board games is also known as strategy games. Now, since this category covers such a wide range of games and so many modern board games would fit into this category, I like to separate it into light, medium, and heavy games. And again, the weight is just referring to how big the rules set, how many different things you have to think of on your turn as you're playing the game. The light Euro strategy games are going to be the gateway games that I was talking about earlier. And then the last category of games are what I call the heavy games. These games have many interlocking rules. You have many things you have to think about on your turn. These are sort of like the complex war games, or the game D-Mocker that I mentioned earlier would fit into this category, even though D-Mocker is considered the granddaddy of modern board gaming and one of the iconic Euro games. I would put it more in the heavy category because it takes longer to play. It has so many rules and so many things to think about as you're playing the game. There's also a series of games known as 18XX, and these are railroad games, but it's not like Ticket to Ride. 18XX games are where you're investing in railroad companies and it has a stock market, so it's much more complicated railroad games, but there's a whole series of games like that would fit into this heavy category. Other discriminating factors when you're looking at modern board games would include things such as the designer, the artist, and the publisher. You may find a game you like and it will have who developed the game on the credits, and you may find another game that designer produced that you may like as well. So you might go by the designer, the artist, or the publisher of the game. You also need to think about the number of players the game is targeted towards. If you're just playing games with you and one other person most of the time, you probably want to concentrate on 2-player games. Also, playing time, again, like I mentioned in the introduction, If you like longer games, maybe you want to concentrate on games that are targeted for longer playing sessions. If you're looking for shorter playing times and shorter playing sessions, you might want to go with the party games or the light strategy game. You also need to consider the age group. Again, who are you playing with? Are you playing with little kids or people your own age or older people? And then there's theme. Theme is the genre of the game. Is it a science fiction game? Is it a politically themed game? If you're not into science fiction, you might want to stay away from cosmic encounters or other such games. And finally, the mechanic of the game is the methods that the game employs to play the game. So, for example, a roll and move mechanic would be one where you would roll dice and you just move around the board. So there's a long list of mechanics that board games will employ, and I'll touch on them when I talk about a game in future episodes. So those are the categories that I like to think of when I'm thinking about modern board games and sort of grouping them together in terms of how light they are or how heavy they are, or who is my play group and will this game be a good fit for them.